Hi, and welcome to DC Public Safety. I'm your host, Leonard Sipes. Today's program is on family reunification, and it's a very important topic according to many criminologists. There are approximately 1.5 million people incarcerated in the United States every day. An estimated 800,000 state and federal prisoners are parents to 1.5 million children under the age of 18. And it's just not the inmates we are concerned about. Research tells us that children of incarcerated parents suffer from higher rates of mental and physical health problems, plus additional concerns. Today's program provides an overview of family reunification from experts from DC's Department of Child and Family Services and the National Center for Children and Families, plus interviews on the second half with two individuals close to the issue of incarcerated parents. My guests for the first half are Brenda Donald, Director of DC's Department of Child and Family Services Agency, and Dr. Cheryl Brizette Chapman of the National Center for Children and Families. And to Brenda and Cheryl, welcome to DC Public Safety.
Thank you.
All right, that was a terribly long introduction, and people are saying, what do you mean by family reunification? So, Brenda, why don't you go ahead and take a stab at that?
Sure, thanks, Leonard. Delighted to be here to talk about this important topic. I mean, from our perspective, I run the city's child welfare agency, and family reunification is when we have children who are in foster care, there's a process and a desire to return them to their families. Government is not a good place to raise children, so we want children in families and for foster care to be a temporary safe haven.
Sure.
So that's the process of bringing them, taking them out of the foster care system and returning them back home to their families.
Cheryl, what is your take on family reunification? What does it mean?
Well, the natural condition for all children is to be raised by their natural family.
Sure.
When incarceration occurs and they're separated, I understand that 50% of all the parents who are incarcerated typically were the ones taking care of their children before they were locked up. This is a kind of ripping them away from what they know, from their sense of safety, from what they need to attach and grow and develop. So family reunification is really trying to repair that rip and return children to their natural state. They may be with a grandparent, they may be with a relative or a friend of the family, they may be in the foster care system, a small number may be, but they really do need to be returned to their families. So reunification service helps them get back to the natural state of being with the people who bore them into the world.
Well, I've been looking at the research, and I've been speaking to a variety of people, and within the criminological community, this is a very important issue, and it's growing in importance. They're saying that this is something that's been neglected over the course of the last couple decades. We have children suffering, we have people who are separated, we have the whole issue of when that person comes out of the prison system, what sort of assistance does he or she get? There are special issues for women. It's complex, but it's been ignored. Am I right or wrong?
I think you're right. And the when someone is incarcerated, we have time to plan, and I think that's what really has been ignored, is to really plan thoughtfully on the front end. Typically, we have knowledge of how long the person is expected to be away, and there are lots of things that can be put in place, including frequent visits with the incarcerated parent, even if it's by video conferencing, if they're far away, but preferably in person. Extended family who is going to be supporting that person, but a real thoughtful plan about how to keep the connections going while the person is away, but then also a countdown to when the person is going to come back, what needs to be put in place to support them so they can be successful and to keep them connected to their children.
But the term, I spoke to a couple people, Cheryl, who told me that they don't like the term family reunification. They're saying their point is that there are many people, pro-social members of the community, may not be a family member, but to connect that individual who was incarcerated with as many people in the community as possible who could help that person out. Church members, friends, people who are on the side but yet could be a positive influence on that person, that they should be encouraged to interact with that person while they're incarcerated, provide encouragement, go and see that person, and to try to interact with that person and to assist that person as much as possible when they come out. They say that that may be the most important ingredient as to whether or not that person returns to a life of crime or not.
Well, I'm going to be a little provocative. I think that's the problem. The mission of the correctional system is not necessarily equally parallel to being a parent. I mean, the criminal system is concerned with recidivism, with public safety, with the adult growing, developing, rehabilitating. This is a different kind of concern. This is another aspect of the parent that I do think the system typically does not address. I'll give you an example. We have a 16-year-old boy who's placed with us because he's involved in juvenile delinquency. He's pretty angry. He's assaulting people. One of our social workers found his father, who was incarcerated in another state, and just his finding his father was so critical to his rage, his sense of abandonment, that in fact the contact produced his motivation to go to school, to stop being so violent and assertive, to participate in therapy. It changed his life. So I think the concern for me is reunification is really the term. If there's been a breakdown, if the young person hasn't seen the parent, if they can't write the parent, if the parent is not able to convey love and regard and investment in that child's development, it's a trauma for the child, and there's cost to it. It perpetuates intergenerational criminality, perpetuates isolation. So the village of supporting the adult really must support the adult-child relationship.
Yes.
And I think many times in the criminal justice system, there's so much energy trying to manage the adult and drive the adult's achievement that the child gets lost in that.
The child does get lost, and there's plenty of research that basically says that these children have higher rates of problems in school, drug problems, mental health problems. So when that individual goes off to the prison system, you know, people like to say out of sight, out of mind. He's 200 miles away. He's not an issue any longer. No, his 3 children left in the community continue to have a dire need to be addressed. Correct?
All children want their parents. Children, even children who've been abused or neglected, they are always, there's a desire to get back to their family. But I want to push to this term family reunification, because we talk about more re-engagement. I mean, there's a legal term about reunification, but it's really, and sometimes it's engagement. Another thing that we don't often talk about is that we treat moms and dads differently. It's very often in our families that we serve, the child has been in a single parent home. Of course, that child has a dad. The dad may or may not have been engaged in that child's life, and then the dad is incarcerated. And in the child welfare system, we've pretty much ignored that dad. Now, over the last few years, we've gotten a lot smarter, and we've learned the importance of having both parents. Whether or not that parent is going to actually be raising the child, we still want to have a conducive environment to having that person involved in that child's life.
Right.
And that requires an equal focus on mom and dad, but just different services and supports and connections.
Go ahead, please.
There's another thing I think is important,
Please.
supporting what you're saying. The average stay in an incarcerated state, since 2/3 of these folks have done some nonviolent things, maybe 2 or 3 years. But in the life of a child, that is a long time in terms of their developmental mastery and what their needs are. So a parent who's been a close caregiver before incarceration may come out and find their child has reached puberty, or their child is now talking, their child's attached to other people. And that becomes another barrier for the family to re-engage itself and move forward. Why is that important? I have to say this.
Sure, please.
We do not create the safe places to talk about parental incarceration. We actually do a better job with maltreatment than incarceration. So what happens is, at JC Null Community School, for example, we had a group of kids who talked about their parents being incarcerated. They brought 4th graders stories around, my mom's got a new dad, and my dad who's locked up is really mad, and I'm trying to figure this out. And they talk about real problems that they have that are related to trying to figure this out from the child's side. Parental support is important for that. The kids are mad, angry, upset, grieving, depressed, hopeful, given up, and these kinds of feelings. Likewise, the parents, as they re-enter, they need their support groups too, the fathers and some mothers who are talking about the other partner. My parent doesn't want me engaged with this kid because now that I'm out, they won't let me return. So these are issues that require safe places where people can talk without shame and denial around how do we focus on the child's need. The child needs a family, a permanent, well family to grow.
Absolutely.
You know, I want to build on something, Cheryl, you said about a period of 2 or 3 years in a child's life and how the child has changed. And so the parent who's coming back then has to be helped to understand and be prepared for that. They also have to be prepared for the changing family dynamics. And you alluded to that a little bit, where there may be new relationships. The child may have bonded with a caregiver who could be a grandparent or a foster parent perhaps. And then the parent is coming back. Well, they have to reestablish their roles in the family, and everybody has to understand that. And that's an adjustment. And I think sometimes that we think, and I think from what I know about the correction system, it's like a real focus back to what Cheryl said earlier about the parent and making sure they have a job and a place to live and that they're going to be, complying with the terms of their release. Those are extremely important. But then what about that reintegration process into a family that is not the same family that they left? And there are a lot of strategies and therapeutic milieus that can help with that.
I do want to get to the mechanics, but I want to introduce two things. For the next year, we're going to be taking a look at a theme, family supporting supervision success, because we recognize the research as how crucial family support is in terms of coming out and reconnecting with kids. The second thing is I want to get into is that, let me do what if. So the person is visited as frequently as humanly possible. For a lot of the inmates who have come out of the District of Columbia or any prison system throughout the country, they could be 1,000 miles away easily. But to try to keep that contact going as much as humanly possible through letters, through video conferences that we're trying to do. But if we did all that, if we had that constant contact, if we made preparations for that person's return, if we focused on family reunification, give me the bottom line. What would that mean in terms of the lives of the children involved? What would that mean in terms of the life of that individual coming out of the prison system? And what does that mean for public safety?
Well, let me just comment about the family supportive supervision. A big stressor for anyone re-entering the community would be family stress. In fact, family stability may be a great opportunity for a person not to become recidivist, where the opposite is true. The concern that I have is that child by child, family by family, it looks different. I think I have to support Brenda's piece. There are grandparents that do not want their grandchildren to visit jail or prison, that all prisons are not child-friendly, let's be clear, and the social, moral, economic impact of parental incarceration on children is there. Do they think that they're going to, and we have children talk about, I'm going to grow up to be just like my daddy locked up? Do they think that police are bad people? And there are relatives and caregivers who really have ambivalent or even hostile feelings about all this letter writing, phone calling, contact. So I think it's case by case, family by family. I think the challenge is that families are all distinctive.
But I do want to get to the mechanics in a second.
Sure.
But there's got to be some sense of hope, because, again, talking to other people in preparation for this program, they're saying, oh, Leonard, you're talking about a topic that's huge. You're talking about a topic that's so multi-layered and so complex. How can you fit that into a 30-minute television program? That's impossible. So I do want to get to those mechanics. But if we did it right, if we had those connections, whatever those appropriate connections may be, and if we supported the kids in the community while their parents are incarcerated, giving them a safe way to figure all this out, if we did that, what impact would it have?
It would obviously have a very positive impact. I think it would be, I think, a strong motivating force for the parent who's incarcerated to want to get out and to, be ready to comply with all of the things that are required to comply with, and of course for the kids. Absolutely better for the kid.
Thanks, Brenda and Cheryl. I really appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, stay with us as we continue our discussion on family reunification with two new guests. We'll be right back.
Kev. Hey, Kev, what's going on?
In the digital world, kids can be anywhere, Know Where They Go. Visit www.knowwheretheygo.org to learn more.
Hi, and welcome back to DC Public Safety. I continue to be your host, Leonard Sipes. As stated during the first half of the show, making sure that those incarcerated connect with their children and get support from family and pro-social friends is vital, both during incarceration and when they return. To continue our discussion on family reunification, we have two new guests. Tony Lewis, who is with my agency, Court Services and Offender Supervision Agency, as a vocational development specialist, and he's also with the child of an incarcerated parent and community activist, and Vita Anderson, Board Chair of Scholarships. And Davida and Tony, welcome to DC Public Safety.
Thanks for having us, Dan.
Tony, I want to get to you first. You have told a remarkable story about growing up as being the child of a father who was incarcerated. Give me a synopsis of that story.
Yeah, I mean, it is incarcerated. My father's been incarcerated since 1989. I was 9 years old. I'm now 34, so it's 25 years. Quarter century he's been incarcerated. I mean, in terms of the impact on me, I mean, it turned my life upside down. You know, my father and I had an amazing relationship, you know what I mean? And so for him, when he goes to prison, and for the next quarter century, it's had a lot of adverse effects on my life, from being displaced in terms of where we live. We had to, you know, move back in with my grandmother. His trial was very publicized, probably the most publicized trial.
It was huge.
It was huge
in the DC
media.
In the
DC
so
media.
this was not an anonymous situation.
Not at all.
Everybody knew that your dad was going to prison.
Sure.
And went to prison.
Went to prison and was, you know, I mean, even to the point of being, you know, incarcerated or housed at the Quantico Marine Base, and just having them type of experiences where you were visiting your dad at a cell. I mean, Quantico is not a prison; it's a Marine base, and so they have a cell block. But you go and visit. You visit at the cell. You know what I'm saying? Versus like in a visiting hall. And then from there, subsequently, he served his first 13 years in United States Penitentiary in Lyon Park, California. So he was 3,000 miles away for the first 13 years of his sentence. So I'm going from 9 to 22 years of age, and I'm growing up in you know, on Hanover Place, you know, where I'm from, in a very adverse situation in the community. We got drugs and violence and things of that nature. So being, you know, already being incarcerated, but being 3,000 miles away, it just added to the stress of that situation.
And I do want to get back to that story, but today you're a community activist. You're well recognized for your community work, and now you're a job development specialist for our agency, Court Services and Offender Supervision Agency. So you haven't let anything get in your way of your success, but it was difficult.
Oh, extremely difficult, extremely difficult. Sometimes I just say I was lucky. You know, I think I feel like, you know, God blessed me in a lot of ways. I mean, it was extremely difficult to get here. That's why I kind of work so hard in terms of what I do at CSOSA and otherwise, trying to help other people make it, because most don't make it where I'm from, especially in that situation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, Vita, I'm going to go over to you. Now, you do something I find extraordinary, scholarships. And they're going to put up the website all throughout your appearance of this program, so I'm hoping people will donate to scholarships, because I think it's an extraordinary opportunity. You provide scholarships to children of incarcerated parents, correct?
That's correct.
Tell me about that experience.
All right, so we give college scholarships to children who are who live in the community in the DC, Washington D.C. metropolitan area, which includes Maryland and Virginia suburbs. These students have to have a 2.0 GPA. And there are a couple other requirements. They have recommendations, but what's more important is that they write essays about their experiences as children of incarcerated parents, and we applaud them on their courage in writing these essays. I don't know if anyone's ever had them to talk about what they've been through, and hopefully that helps to instill some acknowledgement of the strength that they have within them before they go to college. So review those applications, and we give out 3 $2,500 scholarships a year, 3 or 4 $250 book awards. And what we have been very proud of is that we've been able to renew those each year. So this is our 3rd year giving them out. We've been able to renew all the prior scholarships, and if a student stays in college for 4 years and receives these scholarships every year because they've kept up their GPA, they end up with $10,000. Now, it was started by a young lady.
Yes, please.
Yes, that's the story. It was started by a young lady who was the child of an incarcerated parent. Her dad had been in jail at the point at which she started. She was a junior in high school. Her dad had been in jail all but, I think, 3 years of her life at that point. And so she basically went to look for college scholarships and found out there weren't any for children of incarcerated parents. So by the fall of her senior year, she founded the organization.
Senior year of high school.
Of high school,
Of
yes.
high school.
Yes, and she's now a senior in college.
Yes.
So senior year of high school, she established a program. She got a board together of people who had supported her along the way. One of her junior high school teachers, I was her Girl Scout leader, a gentleman
I
from
didn't
Learn
know
Serve
that.
International, which was one of her organizations that she belonged to that taught her about social entrepreneurship, and people from other organizations as well. And she was supported throughout by her grandmother. Her mother passed away when she was in high school. She was supported by her grandmother throughout her life, as well as her younger brothers were supported by grandmother, and the church. The church was very, very supportive of her.
And her name?
Yasmin Arrington.
Yasmin.
Yes, she is our founder and executive director.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes,
And, in the
she's
senior year of
phenomenal.
high school. Now, what I understand from talking to people is that the scholarships are almost secondary. It's having somebody recognize the difficulty of being the child of an incarcerated individual, and the fact that there's people there for that individual to talk to. In many cases, this is the first time that they've talked it through the essays that you ask them to submit. It's the first formal process where they've had an opportunity to express what it's like to be the child of an incarcerated individual, correct?
To our knowledge, it is, and we're hopeful that our program is inspirational. Our mission says that we inspire them to finish their college education. So we're there for them. We have mentoring. We send care packages. We call them every couple of weeks and check in on them. And they've indicated in our surveys that the contact that we make with them is very essential to them. What we do find is that the students who have parents who keep in touch with them are doing better in school than the ones who
Right.
are worried about their parents. They're worried about their parents' safety and well-being and all kinds of things.
I do want to talk about what happens with kids of incarcerated parents, because Yasmin and yourself as board chairman and Tony, in terms of growing up in a household of an incarcerated individual, we know from the data that there are literally, I talk about 800,000 kids at the beginning of the program, but there are millions of kids over time. And they're caught up in this situation. I mean, they didn't ask to be there. They're 8 years old, 9 years old, 12 years old. You know, they have higher rates of substance abuse, they have higher rates of mental health problems, they have higher rates of being involved in the criminal justice system. So it's just not the 1.5 million adults on any given day behind prison bars. That's an issue. There are millions of additional people in the community who are affected by that incarceration. And is it true that the people that I've talked to within the criminological community that we have ignored these kids
I think
over time?
I think the collateral damage that's came from the country's system of mass incarceration has been kind of definitely understated and looked over. I think sometimes those kids find themselves involved in other programs for other reasons, but never specifically for the fact that they have an incarcerated parent. I think it's also such a nuanced situation with people. If you haven't went through that, or you're not going through that, then you don't get it. You don't understand the effects that it has. And I think more attention, more advocacy has to be put on that. And now at this point, though, this is an American issue. It's totally across the board, across the spectrum, in terms of people from all backgrounds are incarcerated. And so I think now it's starting to at least resonate with people more than it did in the past.
They need an opportunity to process this, do they not? I mean, there are dysfunctional families, and there are plenty of dysfunctional families, and the people who we supervise constantly talk about coming from dysfunctional families. They need some place to go and talk about what it is that they're going through in an area or a situation where they're going to feel supported.
Yeah, and understood. Though.
And understood, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
And what does that mean in terms of what should society be doing? Now, you mentioned the Girl Scout program, Vita, and that's
that was one outlet, but these kids are really stigmatized and marginalized. Yasmin has expressed that again and again, that her goal is to try to stop the cycle of incarceration. The kids want to see their parents, they want to be with their parents, they want to be like their parents in some cases. So once you grab them out of that mode and get them going on something like going to college, and then support them, you can get them going in another direction. And that's been her goal, to try to get them going and focusing on something else.
Tony, how alone did you? I'm sorry, I didn't.
That's okay.
We didn't interrupt. How alone did you feel as a child?
Well, I had a very supportive family, but I felt confused more so than alone. I was in constant communication with my father, even though he was 3,000 miles away, but he wasn't home, he wasn't here.
Right.
So I felt confused and hurt. I didn't really necessarily feel abandoned, but a lot of kids that I mentor, they feel abandoned because they're not as in tune as I was as a child. Many kids feel alone, feel abandoned, they feel neglected, and they don't necessarily have the family supports. And a lot of these kids are not coming from the most highest functioning families or communities as a whole.
Right.
So they don't have a lot of places to turn to talk to people about what they're going through. So
we're always talking about the individual coming out of the prison system and what we in the criminal justice system can do to ensure their safe completion of supervision. We do that principally as a way of protecting public safety. If they complete supervision successfully, they don't recidivate, they don't victimize somebody else. We're looking at this from a public safety angle. But the kids, I think, are being ignored. All three of us agree with that. What should society do to help these kids?
Well, in Yasmin's case, she had support, like I said, from all aspects of society. So she was one of the lucky ones. She has scholarships from the Redskins and various entities that have helped her along. She has people in the community and her church and her family who have supported her all along. She's hoping that this program, and she is determined that these kids are going to succeed, will help with a segment of the population in terms of giving them another route.
But is that the norm, or do the bulk of these kids sit there without support wondering what happens to me?
Well, it's not the norm. People, like I said, stigmatize the kids and say, well, you're not going to succeed. Well, they're not going to succeed. They're going to get pregnant by the time they're 16. They're going to drop out of school. They maybe even end up in jail themselves. So I think society definitely needs to be involved. Either you're going to give people a chance or you're not.
Okay, Tony, we're running out of time. Give me the quick answer. What should society do?
Right, I think the best chance we have is helping to stabilize their parents. And when their parents do return from incarceration, we got to keep them connected with their parent that's incarcerated. And when those people return to society, we try to get them stable so they can parent their own kids. And that gives their children the biggest and the highest chance of making it and not following in their footsteps.
Now, the issue with women, there's a huge difference between men coming out of the prison system and women coming out of the prison system. It's not necessarily a given that the first thing the man is going to be focusing on coming out of the prison system is reuniting with the kids. The women offenders tell me that that is their first priority.
Sure.
So there's a difference between women and men coming out of the prison system.
And going in, what it does to the kid. Like when mom goes to jail, a lot of kids go to foster care and things of that nature because mom tends to be the primary caretaker. So it's just different with women.
So, but you have, they've got to find a job, they've got to deal with their substance abuse issues, they've got to deal with their issues of physical pain and sexual abuse in the past in terms of many women coming out of the prison system, and then they got to reunite with their kids. How difficult is that?
Extremely. So it's a process. It's a process. That can be done though, and that's what, again, as society we have to set up systems where people can be repaired. That's the best shot we got. We have to take that step.
I got 30 seconds left. So when the woman comes out of the prison system, there's got to be more for her, I'm going to guess, than in many male offenders. Is that right or wrong?
Yes, I think so. I think they've been ripped away from their children, and there's a special bond between mother and child, of course.
They just need more. They just need more, and I think that's the important thing. You guys have both told very inspiring stories. I really do appreciate it. It's been a very important topic today. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching today's show on family reunification. Watch for us next time as we explore another very important topic in today's criminal justice system. Please have yourselves a very, very nice day.